Juno Kang had one goal in life: avoid doing anything that required effort. His teachers called him unmotivated, his parents called him hopeless, and his classmates didn't call him at all unless they needed a cheat code for a video game. At 17, he was a certified couch barnacle, specializing in ramen preparation and sleeping through history class. So, naturally, it made no sense when he woke up wearing silk robes, lying on a straw mattress in a room that smelled like incense and panic. Juno jolted upright. Where the heck is my phone? The walls weren't concrete. They were paper. The ceiling was wooden. The floor was ice-cold stone, and outside the door, he heard voices speaking oddly formal Korean. One of them shouted, running down the hallway. The other dropped to his knees, forehead to the ground. Not like the dramas, his mum watch told a stiffer. 3 days ago, you struck your head and have been asleep since, with more bowing and more shouting. Are you telling me I'm in a K-drama? Because this better not be method acting. He stood up, stumbled in his oversized robe, and shuffled toward the door. A woman gasped. Your head injury? It must be more serious than we thought. No matter, before he knew it, Juno was being led down a corridor lined with lanterns, through courtyards filled with bowing officials, into a grand chamber where a man in a gold robe sat on a throne. We will send for the royal physician immediately. Come, Your Highness. A eunuch fainted. Instead, more footsteps echoed through the hallway. A group of men and women in traditional hanbok flooded in, bowing deeply. As soon as he pulled it open, 2 guards snapped to attention. He is awake, Myong, my son. You dare show your face after the dishonor you brought upon this house. You are Prince Myong, 3rd son of the king. Then prove yourself. Begin royal training tomorrow. You will attend the Scholars' Council, study our laws, and observe court proceedings. If you fail, you will be disowned and exiled. Your older brothers have proven themselves unworthy. You are next in line. Right. Cool. Just one thing, do you guys have air conditioning? Or would you rather I name your cousin, who has already begun plotting? I failed history 3 times, and my mum says I have the attention span of a zucchini. Juno blinked. Bro, are you okay? No, you've got the wrong guy. I'm not a highness. I'm more of a midness. A solid meh at best, Your Highness, the guard croaked, voice trembling. What? Juno laughed. My prince, we feared you would not awaken. You hit your head quite severely during your fall. The kneeling guard didn't move. A tall, intimidating man with a beard stepped forward and said, My what? Your fall from the temple stairs, sire. Juno squinted. What year is it? The man blinked. The 23rd year of King Taijo's reign. King Taijo of Joseon. Juno's eyes widened. The man frowned. No, I'm Juno. Juno Kang. A murmur ran through the crowd. The tall man took a slow breath. No, wait. This is a mistake. I don't belong here. But they weren't listening. The king. Juno froze. The king narrowed his eyes. Juno swallowed. Your Majesty, you've disappeared for 3 days with no explanation. Rumors have spread. Ministers are questioning your legitimacy. And now you return speaking madness. I hit my head. I'm confused. Then you are unfit to be crown prince. Wait, crown prince. Juno looked around. Since when am I the heir? The king rose. Juno flinched. Cousin sounds great. Actually, the king stared him down. Juno nodded slowly. Right? Cool. Just one thing, do you guys have air conditioning? Juno Kang had always hated mornings. Back in his real world, morning usually meant 11 a.m. with a bowl of cereal in hand and a servant yelling. But in Joseon, morning began before sunrise with loud bells. Cold water splashed on his face. He was served something suspiciously. One of the ministers gasped and whispered, "He's truly lost his senses." Something alarmingly pickled, and rice so dry he nearly choked. As he tried to pour soy sauce on it, "Wake up, Your Highness, you have scrolls to memorize." Apparently, council meant a room full of elderly men with long beards, long robes, and long, boring speeches. They were discussing water taxes, tangled in silk robes and confusion. "I miss Wi-Fi," he muttered. Juno rolled out of bed. "He speaks plainly, like the common folk, a prince of the people," one of them asked, stroking his beard so dramatically. It could have won an award. Breakfast wasn't better. After breakfast came the Royal Scholars' Council. "Your Highness, what say you?" Juno blinked. "Maybe less tax." "Brilliant," another elder declared. "More applause." Juno grinned. "Yes, also, maybe fix the broken bridges before they all fall down." "You want me to do what now?" "I wasn't built for numbers. I was built for vibes." "Never mind. Look, Your Majesty, I'll try harder, but if you expect me to suddenly become a math genius, you'll be disappointed." Gasps. "Fine. Then you will learn like a commoner. You will attend village school for 1 week." A head peeked in someone his age, maybe younger, wearing scholar's robes and holding a small stringed instrument. But since he wasn't spouting poetry or referencing ancient Confucian law, "That is bold," a minister whispered. "Visionary. And now I'm being exiled to math boot camp. By lunch?" Juno was accidentally a genius. He didn't understand anything. "First, I get yitted through time. Then, I'm crowned by accident." They assumed he must be wise beyond his years. "You will travel to the southern province, blend in, learn humility and arithmetic." Then came math class. Solve for the length of side C, using the formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared. There are stories about puddles that lead to other realms, but no one knows for sure. Juno stared at the slate in front of him, and immediately forgot how to use it. Lanterns lit the palace grounds. "I miss home, but here, I'm someone important. Even if I don't understand how or why." The stars above looked closer than ever. It was beautiful, calming, and almost made Juno forget that he didn't belong here. The tutor, a stiff man with a scroll glued to his hand, frowned. "Do you know if there's any way to go back? Like, back to where I came from?" Juno's face went blank. "Pythagorean theorem." "Yes," the man said, delighted. "You've heard of it?" "Yeah, I heard it." The tutor looked horrified. This is a national emergency." A servant bolted from the room. An hour later, the king himself appeared. "Why is my son incapable of math?" he roared. Juno jumped. The king looked confused. "What are vibes?" Juno opened his mouth to explain, then stopped. The king studied him. "Excuse me, what? Tomorrow?" the king said, turning. That night, Juno sulked in his room. Melancholic tune. He picked up a brush and attempted to write his name in Hanja, but it ended up looking like someone had spilled ink during a sneeze. Just then, the palace door creaked open. "Your Highness? Who are you?" "I'm Minseo, royal musician, apprentice. I heard you were interesting. That's one word for it." Minseo grinned. "Want to hear a song?" Juno nodded, and Minseo sat down and began to play a soft. When it ended, Juno clapped. "That was awesome. Most people say refined or elegant. You're different, because I'm from the future." Minseo tilted his head. "What? Nothing?" As Minseo stood to leave, Juno asked. Minseo's smile faded. "Figures, why? You don't want to stay?" Juno looked out the window. "I don't know. Minseo smiled. Then maybe this world needs someone like you? Juno Kang thought attending a village school would mean a classroom with a chalkboard, maybe a lunch break, and definitely no goats. He was wrong on all counts. The royal carriage dropped him off in a tiny village nestled between two misty hills. An elderly woman with 3 teeth and a scowl greeted him with a curt, "You're late." She handed him a scroll, a straw hat, and pointed toward a wooden building. Class is starting. Some were missing shoes, trying not to trip on a goat that wandered in through the back door. One was chewing on a stick. A girl in the front row had a chicken in her lap. "Wait, I thought I was here to learn, not teach." He stepped inside and instantly regretted everything. Dozens of children turned to stare. "Okay then, let's go." Multiplication. He picked up a piece of chalk and wrote 2 by 2 on the board. The teacher, a gruff old man with eyebrows so bushy they deserved their own kingdom, pointed at the empty mat near the front. "Sit." Juno shuffled over. "Today's lesson is counting. We will begin with multiplication tables." He blinked. The teacher stared. "You're a scholar from the capital. Teach. It's 4. 2 times 2 is 4. Juno opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Anyone know the answer? Using songs to remember math facts, peeking through the windows to hear the strange print, explain numbers with jokes and hand gestures, and making the kids laugh with stories about his faraway hometown. Word had spread faster than gossip at a royal banquet, where people flew in giant metal birds and used tiny glowing rectangles to talk. Silence. A boy in the back raised his hand. "No, but that's enthusiasm. I like," Juno said. Another kid whispered, "Magic." "Not magic," he said, grinning. "Just logic." The class leaned in. He ended up teaching for hours. By the end of the day, one student ran home yelling, "The prince taught us how to multiply." "Keep your voice down," Juno called after him. "I'm undercover. Too late." The next day, villagers gathered around the schoolhouse. On day 3, Juno was summoned to the village square by the magistrate. "Your Highness," the man whispered, "you've caused a problem." "What kind of problem?" "You've made the elders look foolish." "How?" "They've been teaching the same 3 lessons for 10 years. Now the children are correcting them." Juno scratched his head. "Sounds like I've improved the system." The magistrate sighed. "Don't teach anything new today." Back at school, Juno tried to obey. "All right, today we'll just practice what we already know." A small hand shot up. "Teacher, what comes after multiplication?" He hesitated. "That's division." Another hand. "Can we learn it?" He looked around. All the eager eyes, the expectant faces. He sighed. "Okay, but don't tell the magistrate," they whispered. "We promise." They lied. By sunset, the magistrate was back, dragging Juno to the temple steps, where a gathering of village leaders waited, arms crossed. "Did you teach division?" one asked sharply. "Technically, yes, but hear me out. You also told them water can be cleaned using charcoal." "Well, it can. And that fire doesn't come from angry spirits, but from friction." Juno shrugged. "You're welcome." The head elder turned red. "We don't need your witchcraft." "Witchcraft?" Juno blinked. "Okay, first, I'm not a witch. Second, if I was, I'd turn your sandals into fish. But I haven't. So maybe thank me." The village gasped. A dramatic wind blew through the square, knocking over a basket of apples. Chaos erupted. Someone screamed, "He's cursed us!" Suddenly, a chicken exploded out of a nearby crate, flapping wildly. "This man is not a witch. He's an eccentric royal tutor on secret assignment from the palace." Juno ducked behind a cart, wondering how this became his life. Just then, a figure stepped forward. It was Minseo, dressed in traveler's robes. He's improving the minds of the next generation. If you punish him, the king himself will hear of it. Enough, he shouted. The elders froze. Minseo bowed. That shut them up. Later that night, Juno and Minseo sat near a small fire outside the schoolhouse, sipping barley tea. I was that close to being exiled again. Thanks, Juno muttered. That could have gone worse. Minseo laughed. They nearly sacrificed a goat. I'm beginning to think Joseon isn't ready for math. Maybe it just needs a new kind of teacher. Juno looked up at the stars. Minseo grinned. But look on the bright side. What? At least no one threw turnips this time. Back at the palace, whispers of Juno's magical math village uprising had already reached the ears of King Hyon. Next, he'll teach them how to calculate rice taxes. But instead of anger, the young monarch was amused. Your Majesty, he also introduced the concept of germs. He said people should wash their hands before eating, and a child curled up next to his foot, using his robe as a blanket. He taught them division. The king chuckled. His advisor coughed politely. The king blinked. Witchcraft, indeed. Minseo galloped into the village square on a horse, far too majestic for the dirt roads. Meanwhile, in the village, Juno awoke in the schoolhouse, surrounded by scrolls, burnt charcoal sticks. He carefully moved the boy aside, stretched and yawned. Outside, villagers were already gathered, discussing his blessing. Apparently, since Juno had arrived, crops had grown greener, and old aches had mysteriously eased. As they approached the palace gates, Juno realized how dramatically things had escalated from flunking out of university to being personally summoned by royalty. His words, one man swore his bald patch was filling in. Nope, Juno muttered. Just rain and imagination. The king said, you know you've disrupted 3 traditions, 2 annual rituals, and 1 very angry priest. The one teaching children about invisible bugs and burning sticks for numbers, and ministers who looked like they'd never smiled in their lives, with a sharpness in his gaze that cut through the room like a sword. Then, to everyone's surprise, he laughed. You're ridiculous. Before he could escape for morning tea, pack your things, Minseo called. You've been summoned, which is worse, the king added. You'll dine with me tonight. This is ox marrow with lotus root and goat tripe. You claim to be a scholar, but your accent is strange. You dress like a runaway actor. Who are you? Really? A delicacy. By who? The king. Juno stared. Me? Why? He wants to meet the rebel tutor with noodle hair and demon logic. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Juno groaned. Fantastic. But I also know that this kingdom will one day invent an alphabet that changes everything. The ride to the capital was full of silence and dread. I'm also very good at singing. Then the king said, either you're a genius or a fool. And ... folding clothes. Then I give you your first royal task. Educate the palace children. Start with my cousin. Inside the royal court, he was ushered into a grand hall filled with golden screens, silk cushions. King Hyon sat at the far end, young and alert. You're the scholar from nowhere. Juno bowed awkwardly. The court snickered. And you, your majesty, you'll be remembered as the king who changed it all, in a country where we have flying carriages, glowing scrolls, and machines that talk back when you yell at them. The king raised a brow, chewing on a fan. Tell me, why did you teach the villagers things no one asked for? Juno hesitated. Because they asked questions, and I couldn't lie. The king leaned forward. I also improved their water filtration, using charcoal and pebbles, still cleaner than the royal moat. A few ministers gasped. One fainted. The king sat back. Thank you, your majesty. And useful. That evening, Juno was led into a royal dining room filled with dishes too pretty to eat and soup that smelled like pickled regret. The king pointed at the bowl in front of him. Juno sniffed. "Smells like wet towel and sadness. You may be seated." A few awkward bites later, the king asked. Juno looked him straight in the eye. "Try me. I'm from the future." The room went silent. "Where?" the king asked. 200 years from now." The king stared. "You're insane." "Probably." The king leaned closer. "You've seen our future." "Yes." For a moment, neither spoke. Juno smiled. "Usually both." The king stood. A small boy peeked from behind the throne. Juno bowed. "Of course, but first, I beg one favor. Name it. Never eat goat tripe soup again." Juno had never taught royalty before. "Sure," he'd explained basic subtraction to a kid holding a dead chicken, and once taught a farmer how to count past 10 using his toes, and liked biting furniture, is exactly why teachers are underpaid. But this was different. For one thing, the king's cousin, Prince Joseon, was 7 years old. "Feral." "This," Juno muttered, as he dodged a flying inkpot. Juno said firmly, holding up flashcards he had drawn himself. 2 times 2. Within 2 days, 3 more noble children had joined the lessons. One because she thought Juno was handsome, another because her parents wanted her to outsmart her brother, and the third because he heard Juno once made rain by drawing triangles. Prince Joseon, perched upside down on a silk cushion, shouted, "I hate numbers," or duct tape, whichever your era invented first. "Numbers are lies. Need help. Bring me a pigeon. Your teachings reek of foreign heresy and challenge the sacred ways. Also, they think you're a spirit possessing a scholar's body. Explain yourself. Also, please bring your strange triangle diagrams. We wish to study them. I should protect you, but they outrank even me when it comes to religious law. Then let me go. Let me explain things. Maybe show them how triangles work. No pigeons until we learn the multiplication table. War!" the prince declared and launched a scroll at his face. Minseo stood in the corner, arms crossed, clearly amused. "And if they burn you at the stake," all of whom looked like they hadn't smiled since the last dynasty. They brought him to a large circular chamber with a mosaic of constellations on the floor. "I need a tranquilizer," Juno replied. The kids were curious, chaotic, and completely unbothered by traditions. "You speak of circles within squares, of numbers that divide infinity. What is this sorcery?" And delivered to Juno during breakfast. He taught them how to make sundials, count using beads. Nowhere do they mention numbers being curved. Not unless teaching kids geometry counts as worship, and even introduce them to fractions using dumplings. "Tonight, in front of the stars, we shall test your claims." By the end of the week, Prince Joseon had stopped biting desks and could recite the 9 times table. But word spread fast. "They think you're starting a cult." Juno was handed a scroll and a piece of chalk and told to draw the secrets of the sky. By the gods, he's good. Instead, they called him the Sky Scholar. Using it, you can calculate the height of the tallest tree or the distance to that wall without moving a step, and muttered, "All this just because I skipped math class in real life." Despite the chaos, Juno loved it. Progress. Cool. Just so we're clear, if I fail, do I get exiled, imprisoned, or just mildly poked with spears? Until the priests found out. It started with a letter, sealed with the wax of the Grand Temple. He guessed its height. Minseo climbed and measured. The results were identical. "You are hereby summoned to the Temple of Divine Order." Juno blinked. "Well, that sounds promising." The king was not amused. He slammed the letter on the table. "I mean, technically, ... No," Juno said. "It does. Apparently, Minseo said. Pouring tea. Well, that's original. They want to see if you bleed when cut. Juno stared. Okay, now that's less funny. The king sighed. Juno looked at him. The king hesitated. Then you'll finally find out if I'm fireproof. At the temple gates, Juno was greeted by high priests in elaborate robes. The head priest, an elder with a voice like gravel, began. It's called math. We consulted our scrolls. Because your scrolls are older than my shampoo. A murmur of shock rippled through the room. You mock the divine, the priest hissed. No, Juno said carefully. I just update it. With logic, then you shall prove it. Juno looked up at the painted dome above. The priest smiled grimly. That evening, under the open sky, a crowd gathered in the temple courtyard. So, he drew a triangle. This, he said loudly, is a right-angled triangle. A silence fell. Lies, one priest hissed. He's confusing the people. Juno pointed. Fine. Pick a tree, let's test it. They did. The crowd gasped. The head priest's face went pale. The king, hidden behind a screen, whispered that night, no one burned Juno, and muttered, all this just because I skipped math class in real life. He went home, exhausted, flopped on his mat, and muttered, all this just because I skipped math class in real life. The next morning, Juno woke up to find a royal servant standing stiffly at the foot of his bed, holding ... a pineapple. It is a fruit of mystery and sharpness, like your mind. The king sends this, the servant said. Juno blinked sleepily. Are you comparing me to a pineapple? The servant bowed solemnly. It was his idea. Juno squinted at the fruit, rolled over, and muttered, well, at least I'm not an eggplant. Juno was being summoned to a secret luncheon with the king, Minseo, and two very important guests. He suspected either trouble or matchmaking. I found this magical food in your things. It has the taste of both fire and pleasure. Walked into a lavish courtyard where a feast had been laid out. There were fruits, meats, dumplings. That's not how you're supposed to eat it. Did you at least boil the water? And one steaming cup of instant ramen? Possibly both. A flaming hot pepper from the ramen landed in his mouth. His eyes widened, and he reached for water only to have Minseo push his hand away. Later that day, the palace was buzzing with excitement. The queen and her mother, the dowager queen, both regal and unreadable. He dressed up, meaning he wore the cleaner of his tunics, and he blinked again. Did you guys raid my bag? You have brave taste. Scholar Juno. Then explain to me why my husband now thinks numbers are romantic. I respect that. My mother sees romance everywhere. She once fell in love with a tree because it grew in the shape of a heart. He had the oddest feeling he was being studied, like some kind of exotic bird or a pineapple. The king grinned. They tangle those who try to climb too high. So you are the one teaching the king to count, Minseo added, and it's spicy enough to scare off demons. My mouth is still on fire. Juno sat down warily. The king frowned. Boil. The palace astrologer, furious, the people were now asking Juno questions instead of him, stormed into the courtyard and demanded a duel. Well, your majesty, numbers are ... universal, eternal, like love. Before he could explain the concept of boiling water, Donk, she said. He'll think you're weak. I am weak, Juno choked. Juno, desperate, turned it into a triangle problem and solved it using shadows. The king laughed heartily. You are unstoppable, my friend. While Juno recovered, the two important guests arrived. Juno immediately bowed. Your majesties, one day you must teach me everything about your world. It's food. There's a plot. Someone's spreading rumors that you're a foreign spy. It's clothes. It's ... music. Even the way people love. There, the king stood alone, looking up at the stars. The queen raised a brow. But now, because of you, I think we can shape it ourselves. Yes, your majesty. Very well, Minseo choked on her tea. Juno tried to recover. The dowager queen looked skeptical. Are you courting him? Careful. If I teach you too much, you'll want to come back with me. What? No, I'm not even this. Is strictly educational. The king chuckled. Relax. The queen whispered. That tree was cursed. The rest of lunch passed without more accusations, though Juno kept catching glances between the royals. That evening, he returned to his quarters to find a strange note slipped under the door. Beware the strings of tradition. Underneath was a small drawing. A pineapple wearing a crown. Juno stared at it. Okay, someone's messing with me. The next day brought a new challenge. Name your weapon, he declared. Chalk, Juno offered. They settled it, like all serious men of intellect, by competing in a math puzzle contest, judged by Minseo and the prince. The astrologer chose a complex problem involving eclipses and planetary motion. He won. Billy? The astrologer stormed out, muttering, You'll regret this. Triangles are unnatural. The king clapped Juno on the back. I'm gonna get exiled over math, Juno whispered. That night, he was summoned once more not to a feast, but to a quiet garden. They said the stars were our destiny, the king murmured. Juno stood beside him, unsure what to say, so he settled on. I still don't understand how your toilets work. The king laughed. Juno's smile faded slightly. The king looked over, and if I did, before Juno could answer, a servant came rushing in, pale and breathless. Juno sighed. Of course there is. Juno didn't sleep that night. The news of the rumor had spread fast. By morning, half the palace was avoiding eye contact and whispering behind fans. Even the kitchen boy who used to sneak him dumplings gave him a nervous bow and fled. He wasn't mad. You're not a spy. You are my advisor, and if anyone dares say otherwise, they'll be writing numbers until their fingers bleed. Honestly, he was surprised it hadn't happened sooner. He was a nobody from nowhere, dropping knowledge that rattled centuries of belief. I don't want you gone. I want you safe. If that means sending you back to your world, then I'll do it. Of course, someone would call him a threat. It's fine. You think I dragged you into this palace just to let you go the moment things get hard? Maybe I should leave. The king, to his credit, didn't hesitate. At breakfast, he slammed a scroll down on the table, because, despite everything, despite the constant danger, the awkward meals, the assassin threats, and being accused of romancing a king he didn't want to leave, Minseo blinked. That seems unnecessarily mathy. Try not to mess up the future. It sounds cooler with you in it. Juno tried to smile, but his gut was twisted into knots. If you don't return, I'll assume you got distracted by pineapple cakes. I don't even know how I got here. It just ... happened. The king stood. Dragged is accurate, Juno muttered. We think ... Maybe the stars were aligned that day. Tonight, they align again. He thought about his mum, about ramen that didn't come from clay bowls, about charging cables, about his school, his friends, the world where no one called him a demon for knowing geometry. The puddle that had once swallowed him whole spread wide at his feet, and it's going to rain. The king placed a hand on his shoulder. He pulled it out. 3% battery. Enough to see the time. The exam was in 40 minutes. But I don't know how to go back, Juno said quietly. Then we'll find a way, the king replied. And they did. Sort of. The palace musician, who apparently dabbled in alchemy, astrology, and wildly inappropriate jokes, approached them later that day with a theory. Do I at least get an umbrella this time? You arrived when the rain touched a certain point, he explained. So you want me to... Jump in a puddle again? Precisely, Juno frowned. You look like you've been struck by lightning. But humor couldn't mask the weight pressing on his chest. He stood in the courtyard that night, watching the rain fall in thick, silver sheets. The palace shimmered under the downpour. Minseo hugged him tightly. The sky, the way people laughed, the scent of rain, even the king looked shaken. Juno tried to laugh, but his throat tightened. He didn't flinch. You dropped this once. On the bus, he stepped into the puddle. Nothing happened. He blinked. Still there. You have to want to go, the musician said, adjusting his glasses. Juno closed his eyes. And just like that, the world tilted. He fell. The last thing he heard was the king's voice yelling, "Wait, I never told you." Juno landed in mud. Modern mud. Street light lit, gum stuck, exhaust-scented mud. He sat up, dazed, blinking against the artificial light. A bus whizzed by. He was back. His phone buzzed weakly in his pocket. He ran. He sprinted like his life depended on it, because maybe it did. He made it to the exam hall, just as the doors were about to close. His teacher stared at him. Jaw slack, sort of, Juno panted, dripping water on the tiles. Can I take the test? Months passed. Life returned to normal. More or less, Juno passed his exams barely, but something had shifted. He was different. Now, he noticed things. One afternoon, as the first spring storm rolled in, he stood by the school gate watching clouds form. Rain started to fall. Then someone stepped beside him, holding an umbrella. "Hey," the stranger said casually. Juno turned. His heart almost stopped. It was him, the king, or someone who looked exactly like him, now wearing jeans and holding bubble tea. "Do I know you?" Juno asked slowly. "Maybe," the stranger said with a grin. "But we have plenty of time."